Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, folks. How are you doing? It's Danny Tisdale, and it is the Danny Tisdale Show. And, of course it is, but what makes this more interesting and that much more interesting is this is number 2 of the Harlem Writers Guild Harlem World Magazine at-home reading series. Yesterday was our first series, and today is, our first episode. Today is our second episode, and what we have done is that we've partnered with the Harlem Writers Guild, and they are, with their members, reading from their work, whether they are poets or whether they are book authors. I've distinguished the two as different, but they may be similar. We have 2 guests today. One is, Minnette Coleman, and the other is Angela Dews. And Minnette, you're here with us. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I am doing really well, staying inside, staying out of trouble, staying healthy.
That sounds like 2 good things to do. And without further ado, Minnette, I don't want to hesitate from having you start, and the microphone is yours.
Okay. Well, as I said, I'm Minnette Coleman. I live in Harlem, but I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. I do historical fiction because I don't want our stories to be lost. My father was the editor of the Atlanta Daily World, the second oldest black newspaper in the United States, black daily newspaper in the United States. So I grew up around writing. He and my mother met at a poetry club, and I've been writing ever since. I write novels. And so I'm going to read a little something from a novel I wrote 10 years ago that's celebrating the 10th anniversary. The publisher went out of business, and I had to republish, re-edit, get a new cover. So I'm going through all this. The book is called No Death by Unknown Hands, and it is about a young woman in Atlanta in 1952 who wants to be a journalist like her father. And if I had been 17 or 18 years older, it could have been my autobiography, but it's not. The main character's name is Willie Jenkins, and in this section of the novel, her father has promised her that if he ever gets a story that's near home, he was going to take her with her. And this morning, they have gone to an area called Vine Central. It's a ghetto that I created in an area in Atlanta, and it's completely fictional. And she runs across a young lady sitting there who might know the victim. Here we go. "Hello," I mumbled, standing over her. "Are you all right?" A pool of green looked up at me, and I thought I was gazing at a mermaid whose tail had changed into a pale skirt. She wiped her face on the back of her hands and looked down at her dress, then at me. I didn't know anyone was here. Without rising, she turned towards the tall grass. "You don't smell so bad over here, you know." I nodded. "You know the body? I mean the dead man?" "Well, he may be over there dead and swelled up big as a balloon, but I know him. I've been waiting for him for 3 days, and he was over there all the time. We were supposed to meet right here under this tree, me and Sweet William." She touched the bark near a crudely carved heart and the initials W.A. and E.I., her hands gently tracing the letters as if they were precious jewels. "He carved that." This time she nodded. "William Avery and Elena Lords. That's me, Elena Lords. We were sitting right here where no one could see us when he done it. We was going to get married." "It's real nice. He did a good job." "Yeah, he sure did. He liked to do things like that with his hands." "Yeah?" I wasn't sure what else to say. "Yeah, he could take a piece of wood and make it into a statue. Told me when we got to Florida he was going to get some of this white wood he knew about and carve me in white wood because my skin's so light." She sighed heavily, unable to carry her sorrow. "He was going to carve me in white wood." Her tears returned. I reached in my pocket and handed her my handkerchief. She tried not to take it, but I insisted as the pearls of tears cascaded down her cheeks. I watched as she rubbed the cloth across her eyes, fiercely trying to stop the waterfall. He sounds real nice. He is real nice. She said nothing for a moment, just hugged her skirted knees to her chest when she finally stopped crying. I sat down near her and looked for something to say. I'm Willie Jenkins. We finally appraised each other. She looked me up and down several times. You don't live around here, do you? Perhaps my clothes gave me away. Oh, yes, I live on Parsons Street. Well, that's not here. No, I don't live in here. She frowned. Why are you here then? I hesitated to answer. My father had explained that sometimes people don't like to have their lives observed, their stories investigated. If I was going to get any information out of this young woman, she was going to have to trust me. Her gaze did not change as she watched me. I'm with my father. What's he doing here? He one of them colored policemen they got? No. Then why is he here? He's the newspaper man. He came here to cover a story. A story? What story? About what? She looked scared. Maybe the people in Vine Central did not read the paper. A story about the sweet William Avery over there. She rose, brushing the ground from her skirt, and looked across the tall grass at the men gathered from the corpse. Which one is your father? Her green eyes narrowed and reminded me of an inquisitive cat as she looked down at me. The one in the white shirt and tie. I rose, poking my toe into the ground. He looks all right. My father is real nice. You sure he wants to write something about my William? She looked at my father and then back at me. He'll write something nice, I'm sure. He's got those men over there to talk to. She plopped back down on the ground. He want to write a story about my William, he need to talk to me. They didn't know William. Nobody knew him but me. See, he wasn't from here, but he liked me. Liked me a lot when he saw me walking down the street. I was looking for a job. Followed me and asked my name. Then he asked where I lived. I didn't tell him at first because some people turn away when you say you live in Vine Central. She stopped and stared at me again, so I nodded that I understood. He followed right on in and talked to me, stepped inside Vine Central. Then he started coming to see me every time he got off that train. He just come here to see me. Those men don't know William. They never knew him. They just going to lie. She started to weep again. So that gives you a little idea of what Willie Jenkins has to go through. She wants to be a journalist when she grows up. And this is 1952 Atlanta, right after the lynching laws came into effect. So this is not something that's current. But what's actually going on is there's a black man who has been accused of raping a white woman, and he didn't do it. And this is based, all of these are loosely based on scrapbooks I got from my father's collections of stories out of the Atlanta Daily World. But there were trials in 1952 about a black man who was accused of raping a white woman. And he was actually executed. And I tell you right now, you never run across Reverend Bailey again in the book except the first time you meet him, and that's prior to this episode. And he does get executed.
So, Minnette, is this typical of your work where you either start from something that's happened in the real world and then bring it into your art, or was this different from what you usually do?
No, I like to look into life and pull out a story. My first book, The Blacksmith's Daughter, was based on the fact that when I grew up in the South, people didn't talk about being descendants of slavery. And so you didn't get a lot of your history. So the only history I had was that I had a great-grandfather who was once one of the most blacksmiths in the city of Atlanta, And he had 5 daughters and a son who had polio. And I based the story on that. I just created this fictional family that was very, very wealthy. And but I took that information from that fact. My third book, The Tree, A Journey to Freedom, is based on a very wonderful place in Greensboro, North Carolina, on the campus of Guilford College. It's an over 300-year-old tree, and I created a legend based on this tree. This tree is actually there that said that if you have been an enslaved person, it's still there. It's in the middle of untouched woods. It's beautiful. It's great. And if you were still there, you could go to the tree if you were an enslaved person, and you would the Quakers would help you to become free. So that would get you in good with the Quakers. And the Quakers really liked the book.
Interesting. I could only imagine. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, so I just wanted to just say it was an honor because they invited me to a few things after I wrote the book to be part of a historical conference and to teach them about connections between blacks and Quakers. So I got to do that. So it's history. I take our history and I do a lot of stuff with it.
Yeah, I see, and it's quite amazing. I wanted to ask Angela, do you do the same thing Angela does with your work, or you infuse real history into your stories, or is it not like that at all? Hello, Angela? I guess she's not there, Minnette, so I'll circle back to her. And I know what we're going to do right quick. Let's take this moment to take a quick station ID break and let our listeners know they're listening to the Danny Tisdale Show, and it is on Harlem World Radio. Harlem World Magazine is an independently owned company, so please hit that orange button at the bottom and support us and the Harlem Writers Guild. And as we circle back and
can you hear me now?
Yes, is that Angela?
She is.
Yay.
Hi, Angela. How are you?
I'm good. I muted myself while you guys were doing your business, and I forgot how to get back in. Yeah, I'm good. It's interesting you say that, because what I'm going to read is a book about being is what I call fierce Buddhism, how to be a meditator and teach meditation and Buddhism in cities, because I'm writing a novel that's in the recent history of the 1990s in Harlem, and my hero is a Buddhist. It's a murder mystery. So I was telling an agent that I wanted her to buy it, and she said, well, what I'm finding interesting is that you got a Buddhist in Harlem. I'd buy that book. So I called 24 other people in other cities across the country, including and also in Canada and Brazil. And
21st century.
Yes, we wrote 24 chapters of our honest personal history of how we practice in cities. And it's called Still, in the City. It's 24 chapters. So it's recent history. The book and my novel, which is still in my computer, but the book that I sold was this book about how to practice in the city, and I'd like to read a couple of the stories. I'm going to read pieces of several stories. Would that work?
Yes.
Yeah. So here's one by Bart Van Mellick. He says, a lot of people in New York are not aware of their ability to be aware externally. They are aware all the time, but it's not really in the forefront of their minds. It's not really concrete. It's never really framed as an external experience of, oh, I'm actually quite aware of my surroundings. But you have to be. When you take a bus and all of a sudden someone comes in and just looks at you a little too long, you know what to do. You look away, but you are still very aware of that person. Where is that person going to sit? What is that person going to do? Is that person sitting really close behind me on the bus? There's a heightened awareness. It's external. So a lot of times I start teaching, and what we're teaching is mindfulness, how to sit and feel what's going on in your body. So he says, what I start teaching is talking about developing our awareness of the surroundings, especially when students have possibly gone through trauma, or they say, I have difficult time concentrating, or maybe they say, this awareness stuff is not for me. So I'm starting from the external, and I tell them that same type of awareness can also be brought internally. Quite often in meditation, you start by being aware of your body or your breath. But for people who are surrounded by so many things and so many people, it's sometimes better to start with their surroundings. So that's one story. And here's another one that I think is quite, I'm sorry?
Oh,
I have
go ahead.
a beginning of another story. This is by a really wonderful friend of mine called Joshua Bialafia. Descending the stairs into the burrow of the A train, I feel a damp breeze. The bass of wind and steel on steel resonates in my chest. I pick up my pace in case my train is pulling in, turn the corner to see the sound is coming from the other side of the platform. I can slide my Metro card and go through the turnstile leisurely. The downtown train on the other side carries subterranean tailwind as it pulls off and the roar softens into the distance. I find my waiting place beside the track and look down the dark tunnel for any signs of an oncoming train, then smile to myself, realizing the breeze always precludes the train's headlights. 3 dark gray rats scamper playfully about the track. One, surveying a semi-crushed soda cup from the pizza place upstairs and seemingly disappointed by the content, rushes off to catch up with his friends. I settle into my body. My knees bend slightly. This is how we practice. The bending of the knees in standing meditation always makes me smile, as that is the instruction given to keep one from falling asleep standing up. I feel alert as I contemplate sensations in the body internally and externally. I can still feel the pressure on my ankle for where my son sat on my lap as I read to him, minutes prior to me running to catch this train. I feel the moisture of sweat on my forehead from the subway bench. I smell the blend of urine, cologne, laundry detergent, pizza, and Jamaican curry, not necessarily in that order, that perfumes the corner of Nostrand and Fulton Avenues. I can hear someone playing Sade's Your Love is King, the events that connect the subway to the sidewalk. I notice how my awareness sensation surfs, noticing the ring out of sensations, sounds, smells, the coming and going, the coming and going. So what we're doing is sharing our own experience of practice, and we all teach, and we all use our own experience in our teaching. And this, I want to read you one more. This is mine, which is called Pavement Practice. I have arrived, I am home, on Malcolm X Boulevard in Harlem, New York. Having the intention to lift, then swing, then place my foot, looking down with softened gaze to see where I'm stepping. Safe place to land, no dog poop. The uneven sidewalk can be negotiated. No holes, no sharp things. I look up and check the line of Sangha members walking in front of me. Walking meditation is not as slow on the boulevard as it is when we're inside the yoga studio, but also not so fast that we blend in with the Sunday afternoon shoppers just coming from church on their way to brunch. Very respectful they are. They wait for us to pass. Then, since I'm last, I see them hurry on to one of the places where they might sit down and order, or where they might choose from the hot buffet of greens or callaloo, ribs or ham, mac and cheese, and banana pudding. I hand out cards explaining who we are and where we are, and when they can come and join the Harlem Sit by donation. All are welcome. No experience is necessary, based on the teachings of the Buddha, but not requiring changing beliefs or adopting new belief systems. So that's kind of what the book does. It gave us a chance to share the way we teach.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I wanted to. I'm sorry, Angela. I just wanted to make sure. Was that your last piece?
Well, I have one more. Do you have time for one more or not?
Yeah, we have about 5-6 more minutes.
Okay, see if I can
maybe
find
a little more.
Because one of the things that happened was this book was sold as a book about New York, but when the publisher got it, he said, I want to know about other cities. I want to know about other cities. So I sent the word out, and I got three stories from people who teach in prisons, and they're calling them terrible, terrible cities. So I would see if I can. I'm sorry I didn't mark it, but.
But that's okay, because as you do that, what we'll do is I'll ask Minnette Coleman a question, because I wanted to go back to. Did you find it?
No.
Okay. I wanted to ask Minnette about a little bit about her writing style, because you were talking about, at least we were talking a little bit about, you take from, reality and represent it or present it. Can you talk? What about if someone's listening, Minnette, and they would like to do some writing during this crisis, this COVID crisis? Any quick tips you could give them?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of things you can do. Now, first of all, I had one young lady tell me, I'm not writing. This was on Facebook. I said, you just wrote to me on Facebook. You just wrote something. And so one of the things I do daily is post something on Facebook about what's going on. I used to write columns for a couple of other blogs and things like that, but I do that. And one of the things I do is encourage people to write down what goes on around them. And when people get stuck when they're writing, if they want to write a story, if they have a story they want to tell, you just put it down. You keep writing. You keep writing. You keep writing. Because what most people don't realize is that it's not finished until you edit it about 4,000 times. You're going to go back. You put your book aside. You're going to go back and you're going to look at it. And you're going to say, I wrote that. And you're going to say, I wrote that. That's terrible. Or, okay, I wrote that. This works. Or let me redo this. That's why you edit. And that's why you write down everything you can. You keep pen and paper by your bed so that you can make notes in the middle of the night. And you
that's
not
fantastic.
shorthand.
Minnette, that's fantastic. I want to. I'm gonna come back to that, but I want to make sure that I want to see where Angela is. Angela, were you ready? Okay. So Minnette, we're going to come back to it. Go ahead,
sure.
Angela.
This is from a prison. It's called "This Assignment is Stupid." At a maximum security prison, I gave them the assignment of committing an act of kindness during the week between two sessions. One man in particular, a small, wiry Latino named Luis, rarely spoke in our group, maintaining a stubborn, seemingly irritated silence. But he faithfully came every week for years. He arrived early one evening before anyone else had been released and wanted to talk privately. He got right to the point. I thought about you and your stupid assignment all week. Kindness. You got to be kidding. I am a criminal. I killed a guy when I was a kid in front of my whole family. That was 35 years ago, and I'm never leaving here. I have life without parole. Time, well, I couldn't do it. The best I could do was be respectful. And I only did that because you'll have us sit in a circle and talk about being kind, and I knew I had to say something. So all week I was respectful. I opened doors for people, stuff like that. I didn't smile. I just held the doors open. I've never, in the whole time I've been in prison, given a shit about any of these idiots in here. So respectful for me is doing a lot. He stopped for a moment and continued slowly. It's the first time I thought of other people. Opening the door for these guys made me have to think about them. I didn't like it. I'm not someone who cares about other people. It can be dangerous in here. Then last week I got a letter. It is from my nephew. He wants to meet me. I've not heard from any of my family in 35 years, and he wants to get to know me. With that, Louise began quietly crying, checking frequently to make sure no one had arrived and would see this raw display of emotion. He continued, do you think that was karma? I acted respectfully and things changed just like that? Does it happen that quickly? I told him I had no idea, but I would like to think his new, kinder attitude may be spilling out in unforeseen ways. I had to hide my own tears. Yeah. So these are frontline people. These are
very
people
nice.
who are
Thank
teaching
you.
in schools, they're teaching in prisons, and they're talking about the real. And we're teaching during COVID. I'm teaching tomorrow night. I teach at Harlem Insight, which is on 100 on Senior Street now. And we talk about how it is to pay attention. You can't pretend like you're not feeling and not seeing and not living. But you have to learn how to be there, how to be with it.
thank you, Angela and Minnette. We have about 4 minutes left, and I wanted to ask Angela, kind of the question I asked Minnette, a little about your creative process, because as a artist myself, I'm always doing what Minnette said, which is looking at it, editing until it kind of fits my mind's eye. Is that the same process for you, Angela, or is your process a little different?
It depends on where I am in the process. I'm finishing a novel, and for this novel, I set my timer for an hour every day, and I make sure I put that time in.
You actually have a timer?
I put on my phone. I set the timer on my phone for an hour. I have a timer to set to meditate. I meditate, and I don't necessarily do them right away in the morning, but I make sure I have that block of time so I can finish this novel, because I'm very easily distracted. And it's Harlem in 1990, and it's so exciting, and there's so many ways I can be distracted. So having that discipline has been very useful.
Well, Deborah, I'm too young to remember Harlem in 1990, so.
Yeah.
It's a joke. I'm sorry, that's a joke. Because I remember it very well. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I hate to interrupt you.
Yeah, we had
jokes.
the speaker's corner where President Mandela came, where
Mm-hmm.
it's all that is part of what's going on at night. And the thing is, that's right before it began to change, when the empowerment zone money came in, when they moved the vendors off the street. So I get a chance to talk about culture. I get a chance to talk about culture in the context of a story. And that's kind of what happened. I wanted to talk about what's going on in Harlem without it being a speech.
So Minnette, is that kind of the way that you work? And I'm kind of paraphrasing here. You weave it in and out with reality and creative, or something similar to that, or as you paint your picture with words?
I like to paint with my words, and I don't have a schedule like Angela has, but I mean, I write every day. That's something I do, and I don't have a particular that I get up and do it. I make sure that I write, or at least look at it, and sometimes if I've been writing a lot and my head is full, a lot of this stuff is just stuck in my head. In fact, one of my editors said, I don't want to know what it looks like inside your head, because it's just full of different stories and things going on.
Right.
And I make notes, and I'll come back to them later. But I pick it and I go, wow, the new thing that I'm working on is more science fiction, but it's culturally biased. Let me put it that way. So I get to create a new world. And see, that's different for me. I have to go back and think about history and not let it too much repeat itself. But I have to.
Minnette, I'm gonna cut you off because the clock is ticking on me, and I've got a question for both of you. And this is, I'm telling the world, this is completely self-interest. I always have about 15,000 ideas, and sometimes it's hard to select one idea to work on. And I wanted to start with you, Angela, and see if you can. Let's see, we have 1 minute and 15 seconds left. Can you give me suggestions in 30 seconds, and then Minnette do the same thing on, a million choices, what do you choose from?
Carry a notebook, and the timer is not first thing in the morning. Sometime during the day, see if you can sit down and make a project, write a scene, write a character, bring it all together into something. But always carry the notebook.
And so from that process, something will bubble to the top that
something will bubble, and you're working
in a direction. Okay.
Going on your head.
I'm sorry, Deborah. Minnette, can you go, because we're at a minute?
Sure. Always write notes, write it down, and whatever seems most important, just work on one thing. If you get a new idea in the middle of it, don't go for that idea. Go to the old one. And if you can't stay with that old one, then you know that it's not something you should be working on right now.
Minnette, let me stop you right there. Minnette, can you give your URL? And then, Angela, can you give your URL? And I know that you're both members of the Harlem Writers Guild.org. Go ahead, please, quickly.
Okay, so the best way to reach me is Minnette Coleman Diva at yahoo.com, which is MINNETTE COLEMANDIVA at yahoo.com.
Okay,
So, and I have
Angela?
I have Facebook, Still Calm in the City. I have a page in a group, and a group called Harlem Insight Meditation. Both of those are Facebook pages.
Thank
Harlem
you both
Insight
ladies
Meditation.
for being on the show.
Thank you
And
for
I
having
will
us.
talk to you
Thanks,
soon.
Danny. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.